from people that emailed, some comments, and then we put out a few posts also just kind of asking people for, what are your questions about this topic? So it's a little more specific than when we normally do this. We're normally just talking about snakes, and there's a lot of questions about natural behavior and all that kind of thing. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about what people can do to keep snakes, rattlesnakes specifically, out of their yards. So I have Jill Rails and Jeff Martineau with me. They are going to be joining. Well, they are soon, as soon as they turn their stuff back on. There he is. They both work in our snake fencing side of things, so there are some more technical questions on that side that uh, I will screw up. So that's why they're here, and they can take those. I'm mostly here to moderate, so they know everything that I know, and I guess we'll just kind of pick and choose. So if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat that's here. I think there's a Q&A thing too. I have to look at that. Yeah, there's also a Q&A section of Zoom that you can use too, but I'll just kind of go down the list. So we don't want to make it go too long and stress everyone out. So we'll try to get this done. I'd say we'll see where we are in about an hour. If we have more, we'll answer all the questions. But I think most of these are pretty straightforward. Some are really specific, some are not. I tried to mix them all up a little bit so it's not just talking about landscaping or just talking about snake fencing, that kind of thing. But if you have any questions at all, throw them in here. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, I probably won't see your questions there. So join the Zoom link that's there, and let me make sure I have it added to everything here. But you can also email them in as well. Yeah, my camera looks really fuzzy and weird. There. That's fine. All right. All right, let's get to the first question. We'll go from there. I have too many monitors. Okay, first question. What is the biggest factor on whether a house will have rattlesnakes or not? I didn't check a lot of these too, so there might be some weird language. What is the biggest factor in whether a house will have a rattlesnake or not? So, Jeff, you should answer that one because your mic is off.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Biggest factor is whether or not you are in proximity to rattlesnakes. So here in Arizona, a lot of our development, part of the aesthetic that a lot of people like out here in Arizona, is being in the Sonoran Desert. And what happens when we do that, and when we kind of integrate ourselves into the desert, we also integrate ourselves in with the wildlife. And so if you are backed up to a desert, if you have a desert wash or a golf course or a big retention basin or anything in proximity to rattlesnake habitat, you could have rattlesnakes. I mean, that's if you are backed up to where they live, then that would be the number one factor.
Jill, anything you want to add?
No, he covered it. That's pretty good. We get a lot of calls, for folks that live in Old Town Scottsdale, and we show up to the house and we tell them, you know what, your odds are pretty low of ever running into a rattlesnake. So yeah, I mean, if you're on the outskirts, then your chances go up. But yeah.
So what about if you're in the outskirts? So that excludes most of Phoenix. Tucson's a little different because there's a little bit more integration of the natural habitat, and like you can get more rattlesnakes more in the middle of Tucson than you can here. So if you're in that zone of where rattlesnakes can be, what would be a factor that would say rattlesnakes are more likely to show up here than your neighbor's house that's in that same zone?
Well, those houses that, if your first stop off of a wash or any of the NAOS that runs through, Scottsdale, the natural area open spaces,
Mhm.
if you're the first house that they hit, you have a nice pool, then yeah, you're more likely to get it. And we've seen that, with fencing jobs over the years, we'll show up to one home, that home, that one that's their first stop after that wash, and we'll do fencing there, and then a month or two later, we'll get a call from their neighbor, and then so on, and we just work our way down the street because
So we're just like moving the
we're just
moving the
moving it.
funnel effect.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, but so I mean, Scottsdale, Cave Creek, all of that is a lot like Tucson. All that natural habitat just runs through those areas, and it's these little highways for the wildlife to move through, and that's when they run into us.
Okay. So well, we know like houses on the corners, houses on the end of the street. And by installing the fences, we can move that corner to your
Yes,
neighbor's yard.
you
I did
become the
not think
corner.
about that.
Yeah, you're the
All right.
corner
All
next
right.
time.
All right. We got a question in the Q&A here. I'll take that one. What is best for horse barns? They continually get into the barn where the stalls are connected and stall runs. There's rattlesnake fencing around the 5 acre property. That's a lot. The stalls have solid walls. The stalls runs have solid walls about 2 feet high and are open bars. The property is kept immaculate, and they still find a way into the property and into the barns.
Well, Jeff, sorry I'm interrupting. You can tell me to shut up if you want. But the first thing I heard right there was the 2 feet high mesh. That's not going to cut it. They're going to be able to go right over that. And when you have 5 acres, if that is actually your barrier, you need to be making sure that that barrier is buttoned up super tight and perfect around the entire 5 acres. If there's any little gaps or rodent digs or any little areas where they can get over, essentially what you've done is create a 5 acre snake trap. So they get in, and now they have they have very few exits and very small exits to get right back out. And when they're working to get into something, say they're smelling they're smelling water, or they're smelling a food source, they're motivated. They're going to be working with purpose, trying to get in there. They find their way in, they get to whatever resource that they were looking for, that anxious level kind of goes down. They've got it. They don't need to move anymore. They can kind of just move a little bit, see if they can find their way out, hunker down. And if they don't find it, they'll stay there. So that's your best way to move in or to run into a rattlesnake is create a trap. So the best way to do it is just to, you can definitely have us come out and take a look at it and assess it if you'd like, or, we're happy to help you, find those little failure points, which is causing, or allowing them to enter that
That's
area.
kind of hard on a 5 acre property too.
Yeah.
Because
5 acres
that
is
the
hard.
gates are probably open. I mean, usually when there's a really big property like that, we don't really recommend even really trying to do the full perimeter, because you probably have big double gates. You probably have there's lots of little places like that. So I would focus mostly on the stall runs and then get that to where it's like Joe was saying, 2 feet is going to be insufficient, especially if there's other openings and that kind of thing.
I think I can interject real quick. Another thing that's really common with very large properties like that is a lot of times when we go out and take a look at properties is there would be the mesh, and even if it's high enough, it may not be tight on the bottom. So a lot of times mesh will be installed on the outside of the fence, and it'll just be right at ground level. And what happens is erosion and rodents, rabbits, they'll create openings underneath, and those are perfect entry points for snakes. So a really big important thing to do is if you're going to put it on the outside, or if you're going to put it around something like that, is to trench it, to put it down underground. And when we do it, we do a foot, just because we're not just thinking about the here and now, we're also thinking about 5-10 years. Monsoons come in, rodents come in, and so it needs to be addressed in the long term.
Yeah, if you want to send us some pictures of what you get going on, we might be able to tell more. There's a lot of variables there on a property that size. But there's nothing that's going to attract them to horse properties necessarily, but there's a lot of little things that might be able to be done. So yeah, shoot me an email, just Brian with a Y at rattlesnakesolutions.com. If you want to send some pictures, if there's something obvious, I might be able to help with that. Okay, let me find the next one. I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth between questions that people asked before and the ones that I have on that people are asking right now. So I got some of those too, which are good. And then if we end up answering one, someone asked a question that's already on the list or whatever, we'll just skip it. Why can't rattlesnakes just climb over the snake fence? I have seen snakes climb up things before. Jeff?
Well, it depends on what snake you're asking about. So rattlesnakes or harmless snakes such as a king snake or a coach whip out here, they have very different climbing abilities, and the reason is behind is the way they hunt. So rattlesnakes, they don't climb or chase things to catch their prey. They sit in that perfect little coil that you see, and they wait for their prey to come to them. So their body structure is a little bit different. They don't do that on the daily. Not that they can't climb certain things, but it's not part of their natural history. Now, we're talking about a king snake or a whip snake or a gopher snake. They do a lot of that climbing and chasing when they're looking for their prey. So they have some capabilities that rattlesnakes don't. Rattlesnakes, if it is a smooth surface that is high enough, it does it extremely. If you do it right, if it's smooth like that mesh, that quarter-inch mesh, it is they can't climb up that. A lot of people ask about stucco walls or the cinder block walls that we have and rattlesnakes, and we've done the testing with it. Rattlesnakes can't get up that. But if you're talking about a small, oh, non-venomous snake like a night snake or a king snake, they can do a little bit more. They can pull a Houdini, so to speak, a lot easier than rattlesnakes can.
I try to tell people, just think about their climbing capabilities, much like ours. We can climb, but we need leverage, and rattlesnakes are the same. They have to be able to get their little noggins up on something to be able to help them up and over. So you have to create that height barrier. So it's not that they cannot climb, it's just you have to create a barrier that they cannot get leverage on to come up and over.
So if somebody says they saw a snake climb a tree or climb a rock wall or something like that, that is not different, what you're saying, than climbing a straight surface.
Yeah,
Straight
that
surface.
it is. It's just it's a totally different ball game when they're able to do that. Like if you look at, like a ficus tree, it's a straight trunk, it goes straight up, it has very smooth bark. You're not going to see a rattlesnake be able to just kind of scale that and go straight up. But if you look at a palo verde or a mesquite where the bark is real jagged, there's grooves and all that good stuff, and the bark, or I'm sorry, the trunk kind of, they're low, they split at the bottom, and so it's not necessarily that wouldn't even really be climbing. They're just kind of going upwards. They're just using that to go up and over, but they're not, so just kind of look at the surfaces of what they can get leverage on.
Jeff, how long ago did we make that video? Or it was like a couple months ago. Like my office last year was full of bricks and rattlesnakes, trying to get them to climb out for a long time, just to address that, because there's so many people that, they find our stuff and just have to, like, that can't possibly work. I seen a rattler climb straight up a block wall. You're full of it, like, so we tested it. I don't know, it was like 2 months ago, something like that, on our YouTube channel. Anyway, if someone wants details about that, go check out our YouTube channel, because we tested it. We put a lot of rattlesnakes in there to see if they can climb a wall.
And that's just, and I think that's just the thing, is just making people understand. We're not saying that rattlesnakes cannot climb. We're
Yeah.
not saying that. There's just certain surfaces they cannot scale and get over. There's a big difference there.
Yeah, I think some people take it to mean they can't go up. Like they'll see them go
Yeah.
up some stairs, and like, you told me they can't climb. Like, no,
Nah,
they,
I
they
didn't say
can't climb. They climb about like me. I can't climb. I can't climb anything, but I can go upstairs. I can
that.
go up a ladder, you
Yeah.
know? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I can't
that's a nuanced one, but yeah. What?
climb up the face of my house, but I can climb up 50-foot rock wall gym.
Yeah, there you go.
Have the handholds there. It's available to me, so I
Very
can do.
similar in a lot of ways. Snakes are not magical creatures. They still have physics to deal with. All right, let me get one out of another one out of the Q&A. Are you more likely to have snakes going through your yard if they are building new houses near you? Jill, why don't you do that one?
I again, it all depends on what is in that area, but for sure, if they're actually excavating, natural open habitat, then yeah, I mean that'll get stuff moving. I had done a education event out in Rio Verde, And that was in November. So of
Mhm.
course, everything should be pretty much hunkered down by that time. And I was leaving that event, and I got two diamondbacks that had been hit on the road just across the street because that entire area had been cleared for houses. So yeah, it's definitely, whenever anything is disturbed out there, it's going to get stuff moving. So
I think it's 3 years is what we've been able to kind of extract from our data. We as part of a paper that we published in 2017 too, that was using our data to find hotspots around the valley, and construction was one of those, to where you're like Peoria, where they do construction, but it's constantly in the construction. So the snakes only kind of follow the rules. They're constantly being dug up and moved around and kicked down the curb, so to speak, to someone else's house. So yeah, absolutely. Does snake fencing guarantee to keep all snakes out? Or what happens if a snake gets in? Jeff?
Well, it's sort of the same concept as we just discussed about the climbing surfaces. So rattlesnake fencing works best for rattlesnakes. It creates fewer encounters for other species, but as mentioned before, there are certain snakes that are extremely good at climbing, like king snakes, gopher snakes, things like that, that sometimes do get in. And in the event that a snake comes in, and when we're talking about our fencing, we have warranties in place where, in the unlikely event that a rattlesnake gets in one of the yards, we will come and get it. Now, the most common reason a rattlesnake gets in one of our barriers is pool guy or a landscaper or somebody like that. They prop the gate open, and while they're working, they're there for an hour, or it could be 5 minutes, it could be 2 hours, but that leaves it open, and that lets a rattlesnake in. And the problem with that is that, when they close the gate again, they got something. So when you have rattlesnake fencing, it is extremely important to keep the gate closed. But yeah, rattlesnakes are where it's most effective, and then it is case by case in different species. The thing that's nice about that is rattlesnakes are the ones that are potentially harmful to your kids and pets, and the other ones are more of they're offering you free pest control even because they get.
So if Big Jimbo's landscaping company comes to you and says, these guys, this will keep out all snakes, is that a red flag or not?
Big
Yes.
Jimbo's a big fat liar.
Yeah, Jimbo needs to chill out. So I think that's an important thing, is that we see that a lot, is like, yeah, there's a big difference between a diamondback and a king snake, and you might feel differently about them, but you can't, there's some snakes that are always in it. So what happens if a rattlesnake is found in a yard that has fencing? That was the other part of that question. So if the landscaper leaves the pool, the gate open, and a rattlesnake ends up in the yard, what happens?
Well,
They,
you give us.
okay, do you want to
Okay,
take
so
it?
we come and get it. Okay.
So what you're gonna do if if you've had our fencing installed, you're gonna give us a call. We are open 24/7. So you might not get your sales rep or something like that, but we have our hotline. You call them. We are going to come out, we're going to get that rattlesnake, and we're going there when, if it's the relocation team that comes out, they're going to do their best guess to try and figure out at that time how it got in. Regardless of whether they figure that or not out or not, they're going to create a ticket for you, which is going to notify the fencing team that you had a rattlesnake, and then we're going to get out there and we're going to figure that out. We got to get out there, get eyes on it, to see, okay, well, how did it get in? Was it a propped gate? Was something missed? Something, did a hawk or owl drop it? So that's something to kind of segueing into another thing is, there are a lot of fire departments out there that'll come and get rattlesnakes. And we understand, when you do find a rattlesnake in your yard, you kind of panic. And so we've had clients where they've just, they had a rattlesnake and they called the fire department to come and get it. It's really good for us to be able to get eyes on that animal because, believe it or not, hawks and owls do drop it in. It's good for us to be able to see the size of the animal, to see if there's any injuries on it or anything like that. And then that's going to help us figure out how it got in. But like Jeff said, I mean, most of the problems we run into with rattlesnakes in fenced areas is from a propped gate. It only takes 5 seconds, and I swear to God, it like sends out a bat signal to every rattlesnake in the area, like, "Hey, they're open, they're open, they're open. Come in, come in." And then they close that gate, and you're stuck with a pet rattlesnake until you run into it. So you are covered in the event that something gets in there. It's nature. Nothing is 100%.
So
So
that's a good question for anybody that is gonna, if you have some, if anyone's going to install snake fencing in your property, that is a great question to ask them, because I think that's such an easy differentiator. Because if they say, "Oh, it never happens, it can't happen," then you know that someone's lying to you right then.
yeah, Big
Because
Jim's a
that's the
big fat
thing, is
ledge.
you can't keep gates closed all the time. That's a thing. Occasionally a dog will kick a corner out or something like that. So that's important. But and also just everybody, I'm really bad at pretending I don't know the answers to these questions while I'm asking. I'm trying to take a different role than I normally do. So forgive me. Let me grab another one out of the chat here. What entices a snake to come onto your property? What kinds of things would be on a property if you were to list, let's say, top three? Jeff, what would be your top three things that you see other than proximity, like features on the property that would bring rattlesnakes in?
So we have food, water, and shelter. Those are the top three things. So if you have food, if you have rodents, if you have a lot of rodents, if you have a pack rat nest in your yard, if you have a lot of rodent feces around the sides by your pool equipment, anything like that, that's food. If you have a bunch of rabbits, anything like that. If you have a bird feeder that has a bunch of seed dropping out on the ground, that's not only inviting the birds and rodents, but it's also inviting their predators. So consider that. We have water, leaky drip systems, water fountains, swimming pools, anything like that. Remember, in the desert, most of the time during the year, especially in a drought situation like now, if there's water, the wildlife are all over it. And then there's shelter. So if you're landscaping, if you have very, very thick bushes like lantana or rosemary, where it grows out, it creates a nice canopy, it drops these leaves that you don't see. I have a lantana out front, and what happens is it grows out and has this canopy, and I don't see, there's that thick layer of dead leaves underneath like this, and there's usually a drip system in it. And so you have made the Ritz Carlton for rattlesnakes, or the motel, or whatever you want to call it. So if you have thick vegetation like that, if you have a wood pile, if you have a pile of bricks, anything like that is create shade and shelter, those are the things that are going to uh, invite rattlesnakes. And even if they don't stay in your yard forever, what's going to happen is a rattlesnake could say, "Okay, sweet, I have a regular water source here," so it's going to integrate that into their life, into their home range, right? And so it's going to be a regular thing for them.
I remember when I moved into this house, I live in Cave Creek. And when we moved in, there's a giant rosemary bush that's looked like it'd been there forever by our courtyard gate, by our door. And that was one of the first things that I said, well, like that's going to be a rattlesnake den. It was a rattlesnake den. Like it's so predictable. A lot of times if you make a house for snakes, snakes will move into it. So just easy, even without knowing about snakes, just walk around your property, and if you look at something and says that looks like a snake could live there, it might be. So yeah, like Jeff's saying, any resources is a potential resource. So try to clean that up as much as you can.
In addition to, it was last year, went on a visit in Tucson for a consultation on a fence, and we went out there, and this wonderful lady, she was the coolest person ever. She comes out, she said, "Okay, so I've been seeing a rattlesnake multiple times this year, and it keeps coming back. I looked out the window once, and it was eating a baby rabbit in the backyard, and I just am kind of done with it, right? And I want to see what's going on." And I look, and she had a bird seed ball in the middle of the yard. She was the wildlife person. She loved it. And she had a swimming pool, and she had a view fence going straight over to the desert. And she had a couple citrus trees with a bunch of leaf litter this thick. And her yard looked fine, but those elements were there. And I said, do you mind if before we get started, if I get my snake tongs and look around really quick? And I found in about 5 minutes the rattlesnake coiled up at the base of the orange tree in the thick leaves, probably 10, 15 feet away from the bird seed ball. And so that snake, if it had been eating, or if she had seen it eating a rabbit, she's seen it there a couple times. That was the resident rattlesnake.
That's long term, and there's probably others too.
Yes, yeah, and the
That-
installer thinks too when we did that.
That's the beauty of these animals. If you spend any amount of time just trying to learn them, learn their things, they're ridiculously predictable and habitual. So it's something, it's so crazy. It's probably the most feared animal in the state, but also the easiest to avoid if you just take 5 minutes to learn something about them.
This is also, I mean, this is not what we're talking about today, but it relates to it a lot. This is why when people kill rattlesnakes on their property, it's not actually helping them. So I think what people think is that they're continually just dealing with the results then. So they see a rattlesnake, they kill it. They see another rattlesnake, they kill it. And they keep going through that. And they think that they have to keep doing that just to keep this flood of rattlesnakes at bay. But that process stops further thought about what's happening. And I talk to people like that all the time. Jeff and Jill do also, where somebody will say, I hate doing it, but I have to kill 5 rattlesnakes every year out by this shed every year. And the question never really comes up, well, have you thought about the shed? Have you thought about what's going on in that shed and why you have to keep doing the same thing over and over again? And if you get rid of the shed, then it stops it. So in a yard like that, if there's an amazing resource there, even if that snake is taken out of the picture, there will be more snakes that use it. And the only thing that's going to change that is prevention by modifying the habitat so that it's not useful to snakes anymore. So, Jill, that's actually a good segue to this other question. I'll give it to you. I live next to a wash at the base of a mountain, and we have all kinds of wildlife. We have only lived here a year and so far haven't seen any snakes. What is the likelihood we just don't have any here?
Obviously, I don't know exactly where you are, but based on your description, I would say very low, 0. Yeah. They're there, and we've actually kind of seen this. I mean, I've worked for Brian for quite a long time now, and before holy cow, ring cameras, sorry, all the doorbell cameras, game cameras, cameras around the house were a thing. And it was something that we knew, snakes are moving through yards all the time. It's just a matter, are you outside at the exact same time that snake is coming in, getting its drink and getting back out? Well, with ring cameras coming in, we're getting calls now from people that never actually got eyes on the snake. The only reason they had any idea that there was a snake on their property was from a ring camera. It caught it on a camera. So again, it's just a matter of, are you outside at the same time as the animal that's in your yard? When they come into your yard for something, they're coming in for a drink or because they smell food or, it's hot during the day and they need to hide out. After that, they're going to get back out. So kind of, I do this a lot, and I don't know if I should, it's kind of anthropomorphic, but, I compare rattlesnakes to humans a lot because a lot of their behaviors are very similar to ours, how they climb and how they like the weather. If it's nice for you, it's nice for them. That's why this is our busy time of year, because it is so beautiful outside. Humans are outside from sun up to sundown. Well, that's when rattlesnakes are out. So of course our those encounters go up, and rattlesnakes are everywhere. They're multiplying. We're running into them 24/7. No, they're still there. But once we move into the, June, July, same with us. It gets too hot, we don't go outside. Well, the snakes are still there too. They're just not moving when you're outside. So they're still there. You're just not seeing them.
So
So
they're probably certainly there if she's on the side of a mountain.
yeah, absolutely. So we're not, I hate saying it because I never want to freak somebody out, but it's just, they're there. You're just not running into them, which is how
That's
they
what the
like
snakes
it.
want. That's
Yeah,
why
how they like
that's why
it.
they're good.
Yeah.
They don't want to meet you either.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff, what do you use to secure double gates? The question is, we rarely use ours, but it's a weak point. So if you have a snake fence that's all the way around and there's a double gate, what do we do with the double gates?
Okay, so the general procedure with gates is you know, you have when they're open and closed, you have these gaps on the side, you have these gaps on the bottom, and then with a double gate, there's a gap in the middle where the two gates meet, right? So what we do, and we have a lot of great pictures on the website as well to visualize that. I encourage you to go check that out. But what we do is we attach on the gates, depending on the construction, we'll put mesh on the gates, that 1/4-inch mesh. And then for the sides, we put paint match steel strips. We attach it onto the sides of the gate and in the middle, so that when the gate closes, the frame and the gate pinch together so that there isn't a gap over 1/4 inch. So that's the big standard that we have, is that if there is a gap over 1/4 inch, now that's the back end of a drill bit or a ballpoint pen, baby rattlesnakes can get through. And so, yeah, with the gates, you know, when these gates come together, when they close, these double gates, that steel strip there, they overlap or meet each other so that gap is met. And
So
then
it's
on the
like
bottom,
just two big single gates, more or less.
yes,
But the same
yep,
standard applies all the way around.
yep. And then on the bottom, depending on what the surface is, you know, we either apply more steel on the bottom, or in most cases, we put a concrete threshold. Custom, every gate is different on the bottom, so that all of those, again, when it's closed, it's nice and tight, but the gate will still be functional.
Okay, cool. Does snake fencing keep out rodents, toads, and rabbits?
I'll take this one.
Okay.
Rodents, no. They got legs, they're gonna climb up anything they want to climb up. I mean, it's a barrier. It is a barrier. So, you know, I think all animals will take the path of least resistance, but if there's something they want in your yard, they're gonna go up it. So no, it will not help against that. Rabbits, it is pretty darn effective. As long as the gates are kept closed and trench depths are met. Rabbits, it's actually pretty effective. What was the last one? I'm sorry.
Toads.
Toads.
Right.
Toads is a freaking bummer, man. For a long time, we thought that this would be effective. And a couple years ago, we had basically a couple of our clients actually call us, and they actually sent us pictures of young Sonoran desert toads trying to climb the mesh, and their little fingers were actually making it up. They didn't get up very far, they didn't get over it, but we saw them climbing. So unfortunately, no, we cannot say that it actually keeps the Sonoran desert toads
Yeah,
out of it.
we kind of stumbled across some novel behavior here with toads. Like we should publish this honestly,
Yeah,
because we've been
game and fish
people
for
that are like
sure.
absolutely not, and then like we put some toads again. My office put a bunch of toads in a box, and yeah, they started climbing. They
Because
stop hopping and start climbing. It's
it
bizarre.
makes no damn sense. I mean, you look at these things, they're like these giant blobs with little stupid legs. You do not look at those and say, oh, yeah, they'll be able to climb. Well,
But
they
they
can.
try their best. They
Yeah.
really try. What they lack in not being a blob, they gain in
Yeah.
effort.
So we're working on it though. Well,
We're working on it. We got
hopefully someday we'll come up with something good for you guys for the toads.
yeah, I got something. We just have to figure out how to implement it. Okay. We have a 3-foot wall that's very rough and a covered courtyard. How do we deter them from taking residence there? I think the answer there is just to make sure if it's a rough wall, to make it so it's either smoothed out on that side or add something to the top. If I'm understanding this right, if there's a really rough wall that's there, even if it's 3 feet high, that's essentially 0 feet. That's essentially the ground.
Well,
So
when you say rough, are you talking
that's
is
all
he
it says is
about
very rough.
rough? Okay, so
Yeah.
because there's different versions of rough. Like
Yeah.
there's that real fine grade stucco that's a good barrier. But when we see the rock, those rock
Mhm.
ledges, that's where you're going to have a problem. So I
Just send
guess,
us a picture. I think then we can
yeah,
answer them. That
yeah,
seems pretty specific.
that's the best way you can do it.
Okay. Thoughts on snake training a dog, exposing them to non-venomous snakes. Is this a thing? Whoever wants it.
I'll take it since I
All
did
right.
I used to do the dog training for us. We let
Yeah.
that go. We're a little bit too busy. It is absolutely effective if it is done correctly. We never actually wanted to do dog training, but because of things we had heard about other outfits that did it, whether it was the way they treated the dogs or whether they treated their snakes. We decided to go ahead and do it. And if it is done right, it is very effective. There's only one company in the valley that we actually trust and refer our clients to. I'm going to go ahead and pimp him out. Rattlesnake Ready. He's amazing. Cody is very, very good at what he does. Yes, so yes, it is extremely effective if done correctly.
And this one's asking if exposing them to non-venomous snakes works. So to my knowledge, that would not.
That from what I know, it does not, but I will defer actually to Cody on that because I'm not an expert on that part.
Yep.
We actually did, for anybody who's interested, we actually did a video with Cody on our YouTube channel, where Marissa actually brought her dog and got dog training, and it was very in depth. You should check it out, but definitely ask Cody the questions because it's good. What absolutely does not work also is when you get a Groupon for a bunch of other dogs at a PetSmart with a snake in a box in the corner. No two dog training outfits are the same.
Yeah. But it's anything's, I'm saying this with a big asterisk on there because this can't be true, but understand the spirit. Anything's probably better than nothing in a lot of these cases. Dogs do not know what a snake is, so anything that can help teach them that effectively is going to work. But results will vary based on my last dog. You couldn't train it to do anything. It wouldn't work. And my dog would walk into walls. It died of stupidity, I think. So you couldn't teach it. Other dogs are okay. They'll probably be able to do it. How high can rattlesnakes climb? Jeff, while you're already here, might as well answer.
I am here. Yeah. So rattlesnakes can climb. So what we found from our experimentation is that they can go up a 90-degree angle at about half their body length. And that is a flat surface. But if they have an edge that they can get their chin on, they can hoist themselves up. So what we found, you're looking at, the snake. So our standard at a minimum is 30 inches, and that's accounting for a 60-inch rattlesnake, which is unheard of in Arizona. There are some very big ones out there, but it is not common, especially once we're getting more and more.
And that's right on the edge, right? You really want 36 or more.
You want 36, so there's a minimum of 30 for some things, and even that's case by case depending on the texture and the situation, what's going on there. But we like to do 36 inches, so minimum 30, 36 to be safe.
Okay.
And you can see those videos on the website too. Those are on there. You can see the snakes that, the different tests that we did with. So, I mean, we weren't just kind of winging this. We were actually using the animals to figure out, okay, what can these animals physically do? So
yeah, we definitely want to know also while we're selling this stuff. Yeah, go to our just look up Rattlesnake Solutions on YouTube. There's we put a lot of videos to kind of show why we are saying the numbers that we are saying. A lot of testing with lots of rattlesnakes.
And you'll see, like, I think, that'll change over the years. It's already changed. When we first started doing this, we were only trenching, about 6 to 8 inches down. And over the years, we're like, all right, this isn't working. It's too easy for rodents to dig under. So this is something that, we're constantly evolving because, the more we learn about these animals, the more we figure out, oh, well, crap. Well, now look at what they're doing now. And if we see one animal doing something, we have to say, okay, well, multiple animals can do so.
Yep.
It's a constant process of figuring out, okay, how is this going to work and how is it going to work best?
Mm-hmm. I'm glad we have a good supply of rattlesnakes to check with too.
Yes.
And we got going for us. Okay, Jeff, can you see snake fence from the street and how visible is it? I am terrified of snakes, but my HOA won't let us do anything. So there's kind of two things there. So first, how visible is it from the street? We can't really do any, like, if you have an HOA that doesn't allow snake fencing, we can't really just hope they don't see it because we're involved in too. But the other question then is, what do you do about the HOA if they have bad rules about snake fencing or something like that? So yeah, answer one or both of those questions.
Get us involved. We are happy to walk them through that. Did I just totally take Jeff's question? I'm so sorry.
It's fine. Jeff wasn't going to say anything better than you anyway.
I will get over it.
But yeah, just get us involved. I love working with HOAs because, it is a good conversation to have with them. It's not like, hey, I want to keep rabbits out because they keep eating my landscaping. I mean, it is dealing with a venomous animal that could potentially be very dangerous if you guys encounter. So, we love getting involved with them, talking to them. We're happy to do, I have Zoom meetings later on this month with a few of them just to talk to them about what we do. I send them photos, send them videos. I'll go out there, give presentations, whatever they need. So, we're pretty dang good at getting them over the hump. And I think when they see it, that's just a thing. When you first start talking about it, it does sound like it's going to be this massive eyesore, and it's not. It really is not. You can barely see it once it's up. When the silver goes up, it's a little bit shiny and reflective. That's usually why HOA requires us to use black mesh. But once it's up, you're hard pressed to be able to see that, especially from the street. You have to be up close to even see that it's really there. So yeah, with any HOA, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and get us involved. We'll do the work for you so you don't have to play middleman on the whole thing.
A lot of times the HOAs, they have rules that they might have established with that before there are all of these standards in place. So a lot of times it's just like a landscaper put something up, it doesn't look good. They made rules based on aesthetic reasons, not knowing that there are functional requirements to do it. So most of the time they're really open to this as long as that work can be shown. So to answer your question, it's not very visible at all from the street. In most cases you can't see it. And if your HOA is giving you trouble about that, the correct way to deal with it is to get the rules changed rather than get it installed and then hope they don't see it. I guess that helps.
We've had HOAs like last year. We've had HOAs that have been like absolutely not, and then we talk to them and we show them photos. And that's another thing is we have a lot of photos of completed jobs, what we do, and the techniques and the rationale behind it. We've gone from HOA saying absolutely not to them referring us out. So obviously there's no guarantees there, but that's part of what we do is we talk to these people about this stuff. So
and we just got a new one, but I've been doing, I've been with them for a long time, and there's only 2 HOAs in the valley that have stood their ground and will not allow it, and 2 out of all of Arizona. That's Tucson and Phoenix, everywhere. So
usually that changes too in time. I mean, all it takes is it sounds bad, but there is some liability concern there. If you have people that are saying, hey, we recognize that there's a danger here, we would like to do something to protect our family and pets, but the rules for the HOA is preventing us from doing that. That's kind of where that conversation ends up going. I got 2 questions that are really similar here. I guess we can just answer. The question is whether lavender, marigold, or lemongrass will help deter snakes. No to all 3.
it smells so good, but no, it won't.
Are there any plants that will deter snakes?
No, there's not. They don't care. They don't care about anything, or, scents like that. They don't care about what's on the ground. We hear about putting the horsehair rope because it's coarse and pokey, and all you got to do is look over your fence and see what their habitat looks like. Like when we're doing removals, we very rarely pull rattlesnakes out of yards that don't at least have one cholla spine coming out of them. They're used to it. They don't care, and there's nothing you can put down that's a scent that's going to detract them. They just don't care.
I think one of the best bits of irony that we deal with pretty often is that there is a rumor it's one of the old local favorites is that rosemary will deter rattlesnakes. When in reality, it attracts them. Like we pull more rattlesnakes out of rosemary than anything else. So you have people that they spend a bunch of money to plant rosemary all over their property to keep rattlesnakes away, and then they have a huge rattlesnake problem because of it. Yeah. So, and this might come up later in the questions, but in addition to plants, I have to say there are no chemical or sonic deterrents either. I wish that there were. It would be so awesome. Like it would be such a great thing that we could do to provide to people if we could use chemical deterrents like snake away. Uh, sorry,
The
sorry, our
vibration.
attorney for saying it, but that's it. Snake away doesn't work. It's a scam.
The vibration thing, we're getting a lot of questions about that. The
Yeah.
vibrations or those sonic things.
Snake oil, yes.
Right.
We know it doesn't work because we keep finding rattlesnakes in it. We had a tiger rattlesnake give birth inside of a bag of it. They do not care. And then the usual follow up to that is like you're just saying that to sell snake fences. You're just trying. If we were just in it to do that, we would just sell snake away.
We'd
That's
be
way
rich.
easier if we're
We'd
trying to
be
just make
rich.
money. We would just sell the thing we know that doesn't work, but we can't. So unfortunately, we hope at some point we can find something. But right now there are no plants and no chemicals and no other devices that will in any way affect a rattlesnake's other than physical barriers tendency to get in.
And I just really, really want to encourage folks when with stuff like that. I mean, it's hard, and we never want to come out across as like we're being pompous or try to alienate anybody, but we hate hearing it because it's a false sense of security with something that could potentially kill you. So, I don't want to say common sense, but just, do deep dives on your research and you want some proof if you're dealing with a venomous animal that something that you're buying is going to work. And because, I mean, we go to homes or grandkids are letting their grandkids play out in the yard because they've sprinkled their yard with snake away. That's horrible. Like, ugh, I just don't even understand those companies that actually sell it. Ethically, it just seems
Yeah.
horrible.
And it's tricky. So if your pest control guy offers it, it doesn't mean that they're being unethical. They're duped also. The manufacturers of this stuff are telling them that it works. So they sell a lot of times. But there are a lot of people that they do know it and they say, yeah, we know it doesn't work, but people are asking for it. So just, be careful. I wish it worked. And I guess that's the only evidence. Our whole livelihood and everything is about keeping snakes out of yards. We don't sell it. That should tell you everything you need to know about it.
And Brian was just doing, research. He had heard some stuff on another chemical that he thought, okay, you know what, this shows some potential. He did a whole bunch of tests on it. So it's not like we're turning on blinders to it. So you're doing the work to see if, hey, does this thing work? Well, it didn't. So back to the drawing board.
Yeah, we'd love to. We hope that we can find something someday.
It's not an arbitrary thing either. We're coming from this from every day. Just about we go 2 yards when we're on our relocation side of things, where people say, "I put out snake away every week or every month or every day. Why do I have a rattlesnake?" And
mhm.
so this is from in the field experience of people who are using it, and we are removing rattlesnakes from those backyards.
Jeff, here's a question. Where can I get king snakes to let go on my property to keep rattlers away?
Well, that is we never get this question, do we? So that is it's a very common myth that happens. So here's what's going to happen if you go to a reptile store or buy a king snake and throw it in your backyard. A captive bred king snake from a reptile store is going to die very, very quickly, most likely because it's lived a life in captivity. If you were to put a wild king snake in your backyard, it would probably just leave. They're generalists. They do eat rattlesnakes. However, that's not the only thing they eat. They're not constantly on the hunt for rattlesnakes. They also eat birds, bird eggs, rodents, baby rabbits, lizards, everything. So it's more of an opportunistic thing. And there's this other, there's this. I think the line of thinking is that if you put a king snake in your yard, it's going to stay in your yard and patrol for rattlesnakes and be your guardian forever. No, if they can't find food immediately or they don't have good resources, they're just going to leave. They're just going to take off. And so that's another one of those things like the snake away where it's a false sense of security. So they're great to have around. If you have them in your yard, leave them. It's great. They're part of the landscape and they're helping. They're a small part of the ecosystem, but they are not your guardian angel for rattlesnakes, unfortunately.
There's a little bit of backwards thinking on it, and I hate having to burst this bubble to people a lot when they say, "Oh, we don't have any rattlesnakes here because we have 3 king snakes that we see all the time." And like, well, they're probably there because you have rattlesnakes. Like they're not just hanging out with no food. Like if you see a lot of king snakes, you have some other people too there that you just don't know about. So yeah, king snakes and gopher snakes too, and any of that stuff. Please do not. I know how it's supposed to work, but I have to reiterate this, to everybody. If you find a king snake out there and you move it to your yard and let it go there, you will have no fewer rattlesnakes, and you probably just killed a king snake. So please do not do this. We understand the thinking of it, but there is harm involved with it, and it won't help you. Um, Jill, are there any places where I can live in Phoenix and not have to worry about poisonous snakes?
Yes, you can. You could live on in downtown Phoenix, in the middle of Phoenix, like 7th and Central type areas, Old Town Scottsdale, that, just get on the satellite, get on the satellite and look for anything that is smack dab in the middle of suburbia, where you're not surrounded, you're miles away from any kind of habitat. Um, that's pretty much the best places to go. If there's anything, within a mile or two of, desert space, then you could still run into one.
If somebody is looking to buy a house, we do this all the time, send me an email with the address you're looking at. I can't tell you if there's been snakes that are actually removed from that house. That's a line we don't cross because we don't want to mess with the sale of the house or anything. But I can tell you if there are rattlesnakes in the area. All right. So if you're not sure, send us the address. I'll tell you if it's a thing or not.
And I think
Okay.
there are places too. So think about that. So if you're doing the satellite imagery and you're looking at that, we've been surprised a couple times. I'm out here in the East Valley doing a relocation, and there would be a town. There's a couple places like either like Gilbert or something where it's like in suburbia, and I wouldn't expect a rattlesnake, but there's a retention basin that goes from the desert or a canal system with a lot of just enough habitat on each side that goes from the desert and through. We've gotten relocations for Mojave rattlesnakes in those backyards that are backing up to those canals or retention basins. I've been surprised a couple times out there where it's like, okay, yeah, it's in the neighborhood. It's probably a gopher snake or a night snake, and been like, oh wow, okay. Well, if there are ground squirrels, rodents, if there's enough cover in those retention basins, anything like that, it could harbor rattlesnakes.
Another question, why are they so persistent to get in? Are they attracted to something specific? I think we've answered that one already. It's just a habitat. If there's a resource in there, that's what they want to come in. If you have fewer resources, they're not going to try to get in. So I think Jeremy, if that doesn't answer it, if we haven't, let me know. But I think that's pretty much the same answer. Here's another one. We live in a large ranch area. If we relocate rattlesnakes, how far away to keep them from coming back? Yeah, I'll take that one because relocation and studying this is something I talk about a lot. I'm not going to give a really long answer because Jeff and Joel are probably already rolling their eyes that they've heard me talk about this way too much. So there's no magic distance for relocation to say nothing is going to come back because it's the resource itself. So if you have a large ranch area, if you took a snake and took it 20 miles away or killed that snake, but the reason why the snake is there to begin with remains, it doesn't matter because you're going to still have rattlesnakes. You're dealing with the results rather than the cause. So the best thing to do, and this is what I practice, this is what we practice at my house. At my house, we have a 7-year-old daughter. We live the same kind of life here. We have lots of rattlesnakes here. We don't relocate anything. We might move it a short distance. So what you want to do is get the snake back into its own environment, into its own home range, and let it learn basically to avoid those situations. You will have better long-term success having a persistent rattlesnake population that knows to avoid certain areas of your property than continuing to churn them out and having more encounters. So instead of worrying about how far it is, I would look at the right habitat. Easiest answer, find the closest drainage, big drainage wash system, dry wash or whatever. Try to take it upstream from the wash there, find wherever you can access from it and release it directly into deep cover somewhere in that wash wherever it's appropriate. That will do better in the long run than taking it completely out of the situation and letting it go. So that's a big topic. We can talk about, maybe that'll be the next Q&A, is we can talk more about exactly how that works. And the second question the same person asks is, do you have any dog food in the garage? Will that attract snakes? What do you think, Jill?
Indirectly, yes, because if you have dog food out, it's going to attract other things that will eat it. No, rattlesnakes do not eat dog food. Snakes do not eat dog food, but the animals that snakes eat do eat dog food. So it'll bring those in, which will bring in snakes. So definitely want to make sure that those are kept up, you know, sweep it up, clean it up so that you're not attracting rodents or birds and stuff like that.
Also, dog food that has been used already, we'll say, that people leave in
Oh,
little piles in the backyard.
Yeah.
Rodents eat that too, so that
Poop?
also attracts.
You mean
Yeah,
poop.
yeah. Trying to keep our monetization going here.
That's
yeah,
why I'm
so
usually not invited. to
secondhand
things.
dog food left in piles in the backyard, when not addressed, will attract rattlesnakes also by the same mechanisms. Okay, Mythbuster question: is it true that if a rattlesnake is buried in a hole and covered with dirt, it will die? Yes. Yeah, just anything that breathes will will die if it's covered in dirt and buried in a hole. So, I mean, I would just not, yeah, don't bury them or don't mess with them like that. I think that's I think that myth comes from a misunderstanding of the snakes as animals. Is that yes, any rattlesnake that is buried or any animal that breathes that's buried in a hole and covered with dirt will kill them. All right, here's another, Jeff, let's answer. Here's a good one. This one came, I couldn't tell if this was one that had a little bit of attitude or not, but read it how you're like, my neighbor wanted snake fencing from your company, but you said you wouldn't do it if the full fence was not done, including her gates, even though the gate is on the opposite side of the property from the desert. How can you justify this? The
Jeff,
question sounds great, but it's
can
how
I
can you
please take
justify
this?
this? That okay,
I've been dealing with partial seals longer than Jeff. So
partial
I can
seals. That's the
take
okay.
this.
Go ahead, Jill.
So
I
yeah, the
answering that.
partial seals are a big thing, and this is something we get asked about pretty much, I mean, at least 4 or 5 times a week. And the reason is because if we were to sell your neighbor fencing where there is just parts of that done, basically what we've done is taken money from your neighbor, your friend, to basically essentially turn her yard into a funnel trap, a snake trap. All we are doing, okay, so let me start. When we go into a yard and we're looking out, look at every opening in that yard as an exit as opposed to an entrance. You want to make sure that if a snake can get in anywhere, it has every possibility in the world to get back out before running on into you. So we come in, say we just do the fence line, we do some drains, some wall gaps. All we're doing is closing off exits and keeping the snake that is able to get in under her gates in there longer, making it a more dangerous situation. So no, and it's hard because folks get so frustrated with us, and for some reason they think we're trying to, you know, just money gouge and that kind of thing. Absolutely not. What we're telling you is you're saying right now you're going to pay me $800, let's say, to come in and do your fence line and your drains and your wall gaps. You're going to give me that money. You're saying yes to that right now. But I'm saying no, I'm not going to take $25 from you and leave you in a worse position than when we started. So that is why it is coming from a place that we know these rattlesnakes, we know how they move, we know what they want. When they're coming in, they're smelling something. You know, I do some crazy things when I'm having cravings. I think most people can kind of relate to that. I'm moving. I don't care if I have to drive to Scottsdale to get LaFonda's tacos at 8 o'clock at night. If I want them, I'm going. The rattlesnakes move the same way. They're smelling something. They're moving with purpose. They want to get in there. So just because they hit that barrier doesn't mean they're like, oh, I guess I don't get water today. I'm gonna go back to the hole out there. No, they're gonna follow that scent along that barrier until they reach that opening, which would be the opening under her gate. So that's why we would do not do it.
I think that's is it's another one of those true or false red flag things like we were talking about earlier. Like if somebody makes a claim that will this keep out all species of snake all the time, and they say yes, that is a head for the hills red flag. If you ask somebody to install a snake fence and they accept a job where you don't do the gates, that's another one of those. Because that means, and I'm sorry if this sounds harsh, but this is the truth. We're dealing with the situation where somebody's dog can die if we don't do this right. Okay, so I don't care about being harsh to this. If somebody says yes to doing a partial job, they are either knowingly putting you in danger, which is incredibly unethical, or they are dangerously
Inept.
ill-equipped
Yeah.
to be able to do the job that they're being hired to do. So, and you see, I get fired up about this because it's like every single day we go to houses where a snake is trapped in a yard because the somebody didn't understand this or ripped off a homeowner. So
I was at one yesterday. I
yeah,
just had a long conversation with this poor gentleman today, after I sent him the quote because he's already paid $5,000 to have his yard snake proofed. I got out there, it's 24-inch mesh, wasn't trenched, gates are open, and now he's like, okay, well, what can we do? I just need you to patch it up. Well, I can't patch it up. And that's
yeah,
horrible. That's horrible. I can't patch it up. We got to redo
yeah.
the whole thing. And I'm not doing that to be a jerk to make money on him. I'm going to do whatever, Brian, we got to have a talk about some discounts in a bit, but I'm going to do whatever I possibly can to get this guy whole, but we're doing that. And this will be the third in that community where a landscaper went in and did a subpar job. And he's had, the first one was 3 rattlesnakes trapped in the yard. This one, he's had 2. It's not just about,
Yeah.
being unethical and taking your money. I don't think people understand. It's not that you're just taking their money and not delivering. You're leaving these folks in a much more dangerous situation than just leaving the yard open.
I think it's like a thing that we see because we have the relocation side of things too, is that we come at this from seeing the results a lot. And that's a problem. I mean, that's why we started doing snake fencing to begin with. This was not in our plans. It was Eric, brought it up to do it because we were doing snake removals and kept running into this situation. We had one a little while ago. It broke my heart because it was you'll remember it, Jill. There was somebody that was referred to us. Her dog was bitten by a rattlesnake and died, and it was a big property. And we were asked to help see if we can figure it out. We gave a quote. Uh, we are schedule like on getting ready to schedule and do it, but there was a bunch of drain blocks all around the property, a whole bunch of them, and somebody got a hold of her and told her that they don't come through drain blocks or something, and we didn't need to do it, and that we were
She had half-inch mesh. She had
okay.
half-inch mesh, and that's fine.
Yeah. So they decide not to do it, and they're doing it a different way in a way that we know. Like she's got a bunch of dogs, one of them died, and she's spending money on something that we know is not going to work. And that is a very helpless feeling of
And
knowing
not
that,
only not
you
gonna
know,
work, but actually hinder it, make it even
yeah,
worse.
it's inevitable. She's going to lose another dog. Anyway, don't mean to be, yeah,
It's
there's
just
there's a
something
lot of
that's, I
bummers
think,
in this
yeah,
kind of
I
work.
think that's where we all this is one area where we get super fired up because it is, and it's a really hard situation for us to be in because it's hard to come off as
Yeah.
not salesman-y and stuff like that. But, the only reason we do this is because, when Brian started it, it was all about relocations because he likes snakes. He brought me on because I like snakes. That's all it was. And, it was a thing like, hey, if we do this, a lot more snakes are going to keep their heads and not meet a shovel if we can mitigate those interactions. And so when you run into situations like that, it kind of like, oh,
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard.
it's turned into a lot. I think maybe this would be a fun one just we should have just like maybe we won't even broadcast it. We'll just get together and complain. Well, we do that all the time. We do that anyway. We'll just have fewer drinks while we're doing or more. Who knows? Well, at some point, there's going to be a live video that just pops up in the middle of the night. We won't tell
That
you
will be
when.
bad. That will be bad.
Put the kids to bed.
Rattlesnake solutions after dark.
Yeah, it happens. All right, let me get. Uh, here's one. Brian, how many times have you been bit? One time. It was a dry bite, thankfully. There's a video about it on our YouTube where I walk through all my mistakes. That's all I'll say on that. What proximity do they typically live amongst one another? How territorial are they? So can I answer this one, guys? Sorry, like there's a thing I was thinking a lot about today. Just happened to be the word territorial. It ends up being a messy thing because most people are not rattlesnakes are territorial, but not in the way that most people use that word. So first, rattlesnakes are incredibly social. They like each other. They will hang out. There's a recent research that shows when you have two rattlesnakes together, they calm each other down. They live social lives with complex family dynamics and a bunch of stuff. So one rattlesnake being in an area does not exclude another rattlesnake. In many cases, it means that it's more likely that there would be another rattlesnake. It's pretty complex. So the number of rattlesnakes that might live in an area has more to do with the resources available than it does whether or not there are other rattlesnakes there. So so think of it that way, is that if you see a rattlesnake, it doesn't mean that there's another rattlesnake there or that there aren't. But if the rattlesnake is there because of an obvious reason, water hole, lantana, resource like that, then that rattlesnake is probably an indicator that other rattlesnakes are using it as well. So can be a longer topic. I'm going to leave it there though, because it's another one of those that I will just start yapping and never shut up if I get going on it. Okay, Jeff, my dog had the rattlesnake vaccine. Some say it's good, others not so much. Help. You're up. Don't give any questions that'll give us, don't give answers that'll give us in trouble.
Okay. There is, you're going to have to yell at me if I give the wrong answer here, but there's no evidence to support that it helps. Some vets, my brother works at a vet, and there are some vets that are sold on it. We come across a lot of, because of our work, we hear about a lot of dog bites. There are enough instances where the dog dies, even if they have the vaccine. So to be as objective as possible and not to get in too many of the details of it, is that it's not something to rely on. It's another one of those things where you don't want to have a false sense of security because of it. The dog training is far more effective in keeping your dog safe from rattlesnakes.
Hey, and pro tip, I just went to a homeowner that had a dog bite that had pet insurance. Apparently that is the bee's knees.
Okay, that's cool. Tell me more about that later, because
Yeah, that was, I had no idea. I mean, it saved her a lot of money, and I didn't know how that worked, but apparently if you got a dog, look into it, because yeah, it's good stuff.
Good idea.
Yeah.
There's a group called National Snakebite Support and other groups like that. They are medical professionals that design snakebite protocols for vets and people. None of them recommend the vaccine. So aside from all of our opinions, Jeff's views on this are his opinion. They are not representative of do not take medical advice from wildlife services professionals. Refer to your vet for details.
That was really good.
Right. It's National Snakebite Support does not recommend it.
Yeah.
Okay. When trimming bushes, cactus, etc., what is the recommended minimum space between the ground and the bottom of the plant?
I don't know, a foot? I would say a foot.
While
right?
you're answering this, I'm going to go. I'll be right back because
Okay.
I can't read the next question like this. I'll be right back.
Okay. Damn it, I'm gonna laugh. I would say a foot to 2 feet. I don't want to have you to take your bushes up 2 feet, but I would say about a foot. What you want to do is make it less cozy for them under there. They may still use it, but if there is a big gap and they aren't like all tucked in and feeling secure, they're not going to be as prone to just stick around for a long time. But and I think a foot is plenty enough space to make sure that you have the visibility you need to see if there is something kicking it under there. So, and we got to wait for him now because we can't see the.
Okay. Got another question. Not buying it until, spelled with two L's. Not buying it until the next person gets bit and dies. Bullets are free and work every time. Jeff, you want to address that while I change back?
I think that was sufficient.
I think you get it. I don't think we need an answer.
I'm not, um, I'm done.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, he's fun to work for. And don't shoot guns in the city because I'll tell on you. Just kidding. I'm not a narc, but I probably would.
You're really lobbing the rough ones on me the past couple ones, Brian.
That's so I do want to address that sentiment because we get that a lot. There is an idea that and there's some of this comes from a good place because a lot of people they think that if you have a rattlesnake and you relocate it and you don't kill it when you see it, that you're inevitably just killing someone else down the line. I would suggest just looking up what the average number of human deaths there are in Arizona every year. Uh, it is 0. So the math is not mathing there on that. It's basically it's coming from a good place, typically, unless they're just trying to troll like this person was. But it doesn't actually save anybody. And it comes from a profound misunderstanding of ecology. So we get it. I get that comment every day. This one I just decided to copy and paste in here as if it was a question because yeah.
I don't know. It's just weird how, I mean, I like kind of, snowballing off of that, but one of the coolest relocation stories I have since, from working here is there's this one little I'm out in the East Valley in Mesa, and there's this one little random population that is holding their own in this one little patch of desert, in Mesa. And I think it was probably about 7 years ago, I was called out to go get a diamondback that had been seen hanging out in a hibernacula. And it was at a autistic preschool like type thing. And so they called me. I went out there. I couldn't find it. I flooded out, couldn't find it. It wasn't there. Anyways, I went out and was able to get that snake last year. So you got to think that animal has been in that area around all of those kids for so long.
Mhm.
This big adult male. I mean, tiny, tiny kids. I got it off of a playground, you know what I mean? And no problems. He knew his space. He's sticking. And I know again, no, that animal had no business kicking it there. We definitely removed him and found him someplace better. But it kind of goes back to it. That animal was occupying his space. He knew where his boundaries were. He kind of learned behaviors. I would think, I might be wrong. Who knows? But that's a long time for that animal to live around tiny children and not have any events.
It's a better way to look at it. Like if somebody sees an adult rattlesnake there, and this goes back to that territorial thing. It's like, well, you can't. I found it under a bush. If you get rid of it, it's just going to come straight back to that bush. When you look at, well, that's a probably 15-year-old snake. It hasn't been just sitting under that bush for 15 years. It's been in the area here. So if that's true, then it means that it's not that it's a new threat. It means that in 15 years, it's been there, didn't bother anybody, and you just happened to notice it this time,
Yeah.
which is not a new threat. It's one that you now know about. That might make an emotional reaction, but logically, an action that you can take. It's goes back to that. It's not the snake, it's the bush. So there's a lot of lessons there and just kind of understanding how much these animals stay in one spot and use an area. Okay, I'm going to try to wrap this up in the next 15 minutes because we have any of these on here. I'm going to go to the ones that people ask in the chat first, and then I'll go back into this. And then I promised my daughter I would go try to find a night snaker with her tonight. So I have
You gotta go.
priorities, We have a tree in our front yard, the front area that has a large pack rat. Maybe she's coming out during the night. It seems surprisingly has done so well when we know there are snakes around. Thoughts? Leave the pack rat alone or try to relocate? So pack rats and rattlesnakes are good. They're roommates. So a pack rat, they do show up in stomach contents. They are eaten by rattlesnakes, but they also live side by side. So a pack rat nest is a rattlesnake house. And you can get rid of the rat, but the nest itself is the issue. So I would say anybody, if you have a pack rat midden on your property, And if you don't know what that looks like, it looks like a big pile of sticks and junk that's there. You want to get rid of it. Okay. It doesn't mean you have to kill the rat if you don't want to. Okay. But what I would do, and this is how you get rid of it, is how I've gotten rid of my property and lots of people's properties, is uh, use a garden hose, get a rake, take off the top of the nest, like mess it up, and then flood the nest. Anything that's in there will come running out and then just mess it up. Do that until it's destroyed. Okay. If the rat starts to rebuild it, you'll know because there'll be green choya, all kinds of new stuff there. Repeat until it goes away. You do not want to have pack rat nests persisting on your property because that's where rattlesnakes give birth. That's where they spend the winter. It's like an all-purpose home for rattlesnakes that comes with a janitor they'll carry rattlesnake poop and sheds out of it. They will continue to insulate it. So yeah, that pack rat nest, it is synonymous with rattlesnake activity on your property, probably. Let me see. We got a few more. Do dogs keep rattlesnakes away? Jill.
No, they do not. They're not looked at as a threat or anything like that until they're on top of one another. So, you know, yeah, I mean, plain and simple. They are a threat to rattlesnakes, but the scent of them or anything like that, it's not gonna be any different than all the other predatory scents that they're sensing anytime they're on their way to get anything, like bobcats, coyotes, that kind of stuff. So, no, it will not keep them away.
Jeff, I got another potentially salty one for you. My landscapers installed a snake. Sorry, letters are weird. My landscaper installed a snake fence at our home. It looks the exact same work as yours I've seen on Facebook. Sorry, there's a lot of fun extra letters in this. See on Facebook, we have 3 rattlesnakes this spring by the pool. One almost bit my dog. Explain to me why this isn't a scam. Jeff.
Thank you, Brian. We, you know what? I think we addressed this pretty extensively in the beginning when it comes to standards. So there is a very big difference between someone who puts up a rattlesnake fence as just a business versus people who put up a rattlesnake fence who are also huge snake nerds who have extensive experience with snakes, what they can do. We've talked about a lot of testing, but the other thing that's part of it is that we were huge snake people before the job came. If you knew anything about like our lives when we are done here at work, we go look for snakes. So Jill, Michael in production, and I last night when we were done with work, we went out looking for snakes until 11 o'clock when we woke up and started again. So that lens, hopefully just doing that and like finding them, having a search image, seeing where they hide, seeing what they do, even though there may be some similarities in aesthetics, it's all about who does it, because there can be something that looks very similar. But if you have that pinhole, if the gaps in your gates are quite literally just barely over 1/4 inch, you can get baby rattlesnakes in there. It is all about being able to look at a situation and knowing snakes and knowing whether or not they can get through. And that's the difference. It's who's doing it. And if they've never seen a snake before, and I don't want to paint with a broad brush for all landscapers, handymen, pool guys, whoever that offer it, but a lot of them, if not most of them, they're just doing it as a part of their business, as an extra thing, and they don't have any experience with snakes at all.
I definitely invite you, whoever asked the question, and I don't know if you're in Tucson or if you're in Phoenix, call us. Or when we come out and we take a look at a property, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You can walk the entire property with me and we'll figure it out. We'll figure out exactly how these snakes are getting in, because obviously if you're having dog bites, that's something you need to look into, sooner rather than later. Let's figure it out. It's hard for us to answer any, kind of questions when we don't actually have eyes on it.
Okay.
But yeah, call us. We are more than happy to come out and take a look at it and see, where the failure is, what's going on.
I wanted to point out something that seemed obvious now. I realized while you're talking about this that everybody except for me, like if you need to know what that difference is, um, there's reptile cages in both of you guys' backgrounds. So I didn't have.
No.
Yeah, this is like part of our life. Jeff's trying to explain that like we really like snake, and then he's got like a
I've
bunch of
got it.
stuff. So I got a Diamondback that
There
I
you
was
go.
using
Yeah,
for a
I got
presentation this morning, just so I can be cool too.
it.
This is not its house. It doesn't live in here. It was doing a presentation. So I have a Diamondback, but I'm also in the I have snakes in my background. So there's some other questions in the pre-asked ones, but they're all kind of different versions of ones that we've answered already. I think we talked a lot more about snake fencing than I was expecting. There's a lot of details though, and I'm glad we got to spend some time there because it's such a like this is kind of it's a two-part thing. There's really three parts. Like finding a snake in the yard and removing it or doing whatever, that's an indicator. But then the other two parts of making sure that a snake can't get into an area if it wants to, and reducing the reason why it wants to be there to begin with. All of that kind of put together is what makes this it's kind of a system, and there's a lot of details to it, and that's why it's so slow to kind of catch on in culture. But we're seeing a big change in that to where people are really starting to, if somebody says I had to kill 10 rattlesnakes a year every year for 40 years, they're starting to like, maybe that's not working. You're telling me that you're doing the thing your grandpa did, and you're also telling me you had to do it because your grandpa got bit by 4 rattlesnakes. Let's
Well,
think this through,
this has been really, really cool because we had met before we started tonight, and we never ever want to come off as sales pitchy. That's not what our goal is ever. So we're doing,
Very bad at that.
do HOA education and stuff like that. I've even had people tell me, you need to speak more on your fencing, speak more on your fencing, tell them. Well, no, education is our main thing. We want to like teach people how to like really coexist with these guys out there. So we never want to come off as sales pitchy. So it's been awesome that everybody's kind of been really asking those questions about the fencing, and we've been able to talk about it because we don't want to come off like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not always very fun to talk
That's
about
not our
measure of
objective. So
steel, but it's
yeah.
important. It's part of it, so that's why I think we'll do more of this kind of thing. I liked it. It was easy. You guys can do it without me too, but I think this might be a good way to kind of discuss some of those questions, because most of the time when you're talking about these are not questions you really have an opportunity to talk about outside of like the actual quote process. So maybe we should change that. I think I got couple more questions and we'll answer those, and I think we'll probably call it a night after that. What type of shoes or pants are best if you're working on your property in case you get bit? So there's a lot of different things you can get. The shoes that we just wear tall boots. They're not snake proof or anything like that, but it certainly helps. It's not just whether something can penetrate, it's also how thick it is. So if you have thicker boots, then fang has to go through more. And you also want to wear loose pants if you can. So my standard wear is I have 10-inch tall hiking boots or hunting boots. And then I have loose fitting pants. So if a snake were to bite my leg, it's most likely going to just catch leg, like pant or something like that, and not skin. There's other stuff you can get too, but that should exclude most of the bite situations. Again, don't test it. I've never tested it. Not trying to test it, but just seeing what else works, that's okay. How long do rattlesnakes typically live? It depends. This is a hard thing to study and know for sure because nothing in the wild ever dies in its sleep of old age. You live until something finds you and rips you to shreds, or you die by some other terrible way. So a snake that's, I would say, 10 to 15 or older, 10 to 20, that's an old adult snake. They can live longer. There have been some that are found longer. We have some like this Diamondback here. It's probably in its mid 30s at this point. And it's doing fine because it lives a life of luxury. But it almost died when we found it. That's why I have it. So there's lots of different things like that. So I'd say if you see a big adult snake crawling around there, assume it's like 10, something like that. Do we come to St. David? What are the other snake breeds in the area to watch out for? We don't really, I guess like recreationally, we go out there to go find stuff pretty often. But I think in your area, it's going to be a lot of diamondbacks and Mojave rattlesnakes, depending exactly where you are. It's probably going to be there the most. But we don't really do much out there other than go look for snakes for fun.
Where is that?
But if you have
Where is it?
St. David,
That
it's south of Benson, kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you have anything, you can email me. If you're not in our service area, we know there's a lot of people that have ranches and particular circumstances is different. It kind of keeps us on our toes to be able to think through things like that. So if you have an issue there, you can, even if it's not in our service area, you can send me an email and I'll tell you, what we can, what we know. And then one last question here. Sorry, I'm kind of rushing through in the end too. I just want to make sure I get everybody here. Do door seal whiskers? I think that's, door seal whiskers work to prevent entry under doors that have a gap on shop doors and garage doors. Jill, you want to take that one? What they're talking about with garage seal? Okay.
Unfortunately, no. Even some of those more industrial strength sweeps, they might work for a very short period of time, but the problem is that our climate just does not handle all of that stuff well. The rubber sweeps, the whiskers that you're kind of talking, those brush sweeps, they just get brittle and they break. The brushes, especially, I mean, if it is not a super super tight clump, they're not going to work at all. But even those super tight weaves, we've seen just over time, they just break down. And then, I mean, any kind of pressure at all, they're able to just push right through into what they're trying to get to. So, yeah, they don't hold up. That's why we don't use them. We will not use anything but steel, a combination of steel and concrete to seal up those bottom gaps.
Yep. Anything that's not permanent isn't permanent, and you want something permanent. So steel, concrete, good. Rubber, anything that bends, you're gonna get a snake in your yard. So, yeah, that's something to watch out for. I did see one last question, so I'll answer this one. It's partly something I've answered before already. It's if you see a snake in your property, how far do you have to move it to deter it from returning without endangering its life? Again, that's not just a function of distance. It's a function of relocate of the right microhabitat. So if you're out on 80 acres, you say you're in La Paz County, send, I'm saying this a lot. There's a lot of nuance to this. Send me an email with what your property is, and I will return some GPS coordinates of places that I think are suitable microhabitat to deal with the species that are in your area. So I think we're going to wrap it up with that. Thank you, everybody, for the good questions. We had good attendance. We got to talk about some technical stuff. Yeah. We should do this again. We'll start gathering more questions. And
fellow who asked about why there's snakes getting in, call us. Have us out. That's the best way to do it. I can't answer you from here, but we are happy to come out and take a look and tell you what's going on.
And I'm gonna try. If I did this right, I should be able to drop this as a link so you can review this later or send it to somebody if you need to. So, okay, everybody, thanks a lot. We will see you later. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Bye.